I didn't know a love like this existed. Someone who is supportive, kind, and hilarious. Someone who helps me reach my goals 10 times faster. Someone I can trust unconditionally and be my authentic self at all time. I didn't know love like this existed until I met you. Hey, my name is Tabitha Solomon. I'm a 35-year-old woman who has been ambitious and driven in my life, except for this one area of love. So I'm gonna just be honest and transparent with you guys. Story time about how I manifested my dream fiance. It was 2020 and I had been dating a guy for maybe 6 months at that time. Even though he had red flags from day one, I continued in the relationship. First mistake. Friends, red flags are deal breakers. So once you identify your deal breakers and someone has those qualities, you really shouldn't be in a relationship with that person. I would always try to convince myself that their redeeming qualities, oh, well, he's funny or he's attractive or whatever the case might be, but he also has these flaws that I said that I personally wouldn't be okay with. And so I finally had the courage to leave that relationship. That was tough if I'm honest with you. Okay, my fiance is walking in right now. Hey, babe.
No, are you live?
I'm recording live right now. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember sitting in my room after this breakup and I just started crying. I remember just essentially surrendering to what God would have for me when it came to a partner. That's the best way I could describe it. So a few days later, I came up with the idea of doing a 21-day Daniel fast. I was going to be hyper focused on praying that God's will be done and praying for my future husband. When I say praying for him, I was praying for his health, for his mental well-being, for his finances, for his happiness, praying that any challenges that he was facing in his life, that God would intervene. I also started seeing a therapist. This is huge because they allowed me to process and close out the chapter that I just went through. So I felt liberated from that relationship and open and free. I have a funny story. One of my best friends on this planet, his name is Isaac. He has the kookiest, craziest, coolest ideas ever. One day he calls me up and he says, Tabitha, I have an idea for you and you have to do it. It's like, okay, what's this idea? He was like, I know you're living in Jacksonville, Florida right now, but I want you to set your dating app to Washington, D.C. I lived in D.C. 10 years ago. I hated it, was not a fan. I have no plans on moving back. Why would I ever set my dating preferences to Washington, D.C.? And he's like, no, hear me out. Think about this friend. He listed 8 friends. He was like, and they're all married, right? Think about where they all met their spouses. And I was like, D.C. I just connected the dots that a lot of our friends met their partners in DC. So I want you to change your dating profile to DC. So I did. I changed it to DC and I really thought nothing of it, to be honest with you. And when I say that, I literally had no expectations. I was on there just for fun. So you know what's funny about this particular situation? A couple things. I told you all I was praying for my future husband for 21 days. And on day 21, I was matched with Richard. He was the one and only person I ever talked to on the app during this crazy, period on the DC preference dating app for Hinge. Well, I remember asking one of my exes to read this book called Relationship Goals by Pastor Mike Todd. He did not want to do it. Maybe 2 weeks into dating Richard, I mentioned this book. He had downloaded the book and he already started reading it and he was texting me, hey, I read this chapter in the book. I thought this was really interesting. What did you think? Pastor Mike Todd, if you watch this video, big shout out. You played a major role in the success of this relationship. But in the book, it talks about the first 90 days that you're dating. This idea of not putting any titles, no pressure on the relationship at all, removing that from the situation. Secondly, finding a Christian couple where for 8 or so weeks, you're having weekly calls to talk about real issues. After that 90-day period, you could then assess whether you wanted to enter a relationship with that person or not. After that 90 days, it was very clear that this man Where do I sign up? We were trying to help each other close the gaps. It was just such a beautiful thing. And so after 6 months of dating long distance, flying back and forth, meeting up in New York and DC and Philly and Daytona, we found reasons to fly and see each other. So it was fun. And he shared with me, hey, if things are still looking good 6 months after you've moved here, I would love to think about next steps. So it turns out it wasn't 6 months after I moved to DC, but 5 months. We went to Hawaii for one of the most amazing trips ever, and the proposal was literally better than anything I could have ever expected. It was sunset. We were dressed up because we were going to a fine dining restaurant that evening. He hired a professional photographer, and he got me my dream ring. I think something really important to show you guys is my vision board. This was my 2021 vision board, and this was my first vision, which was love, and that was my ring. And it turns out this was my ring. Oh my God. Come on, focus here for me. One thing I want to point out here is that God was at the center of it all. I would encourage you to do a 21-day fast. Give up all the processed foods. Eat only things that are grown from the earth. Surround yourself with Christian married couples. Go to them for counsel, get therapy, make sure you're working on yourself. So when that man or woman walks into your life, you were prepared. You're prepared to become the husband or wife that God's called you to be. If you have any questions from the content of this video, be sure to leave a comment on this video. I'm gonna be actively responding to your questions. So friends, I hope you're blessed by hearing that testimony. If you love this video, you're gonna love these videos. Be sure to check them out. And hey, make sure you hit that big red button at the bottom that says subscribe and the ring bell right next to it. I wanna make sure you never miss out on the tea. And remember, the best way to predict the future is to create it.